dropped it in a bucket, touchdown!
Backer transition three, bang!
He's bends it like Beckham. Are you kidding?
Hey, how you doing? Here's episode 49 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. Last week, we had to tip our caps to the Super Bowl 59 champion Philadelphia Eagles and speculate a little bit on what could be the fall of the Chiefs dynasty. There was also the Anthony Davis injury that threw a big rock in the Mavericks' windshield after that Luka Doncic trade, and the big recent MLB signings like Clayton Kershaw, Kenley Jansen, Alex Bregman, and Pete Alonso. This week, we're going to go around that same horn and try and turn three. First, let's see if we can figure out what the heck the NFL quarterback market is doing right now. There are 32 starting quarterback jobs in the NFL every season. Of course, there will be more than 32 that start at least one game in every season. All math aside, though, who is good enough to be one of those 32? I don't think Daniel Jones is one of them, and I believe that the Steelers have two of them with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. So why? Why are they looking at him? I have absolutely no idea, and I just mentioned exactly this on X and Threads this week. Pittsburgh's also been linked to the Jaguars' Trevor Lawrence. I'm really happy to hear T-Law himself say that he doesn't want to leave the Jags, because who else could be delusional enough to take on a contract that still has to pay out over $200 million over the next 5 years? Trevor's never been elite for the first 3 years, so maybe he has a breakout year in him this year, but did you watch the whole Jags offense? I wouldn't bet on that. It's not even that they're terrible, which they are. They were also games, even when Trevor was healthy, they didn't trust him to throw the ball. They would run 60% of their snaps or more for like 3 yards a carry. Let me be so clear with what the Steelers actually need to do this offseason. Make a decision before this summer, ideally, before you report for camp, on either Russ or Justin Fields, but not both. Whoever you pick, give them a reasonable, maybe less than market value extension with the promise that you're going to put some actual offensive weapons around them, and the money you aren't paying them, that's going to go directly to somebody else that will help you win games. It really isn't that complicated if you ask me. I know Russ didn't win as many games as Fields did this year, but he had better stats. Also, in likelihood, I touch on this often, but I think Russell Wilson is going to be a Hall of Famer eventually. He's just accumulated so many stats, and he's been to a couple Super Bowls. I also understand that Justin Fields is a nightmare to game plan against and to try and contain his legs. I just say pick one so that there's not any more controversy over them, especially every single week, Who are we going to start? Who should we start? Now, there's actually a three-headed monster of sorts in terms of the top free agent or soon-to-be free agent quarterbacks. You got Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold. Never in my life could I have predicted that that'd be the case when the 2024 season started. Rodgers was meh. I know the narrative is going to be that he was terrible, but he had a just not good Jets team around him. Kirk Cousins was truly awful in most ways, and Sam Darnold was an MVP candidate. Clearly, I don't know ball, and neither do you, right? The most likely iteration of landings for all three of them, as I see it right now. Rodgers to the Giants just to spite the Jets, and possibly to compete with and or mentor a rookie quarterback. Kirk Cousins to the Jets just to fill that void for a year or two. And then I think the Vikings are going to bite the bullet. They're going to stay with Darnold, extend him for 3 to 5 years at $40 million a year, maybe more. Good news is the Vikings can afford to do that because Darnold's only 27. He should have a lot of his prime left. Now let's say all of that happens. I am confirmed as football Nostradamus, and that would leave, I'm guessing, the Raiders, Giants, Titans, Browns, and possibly the Seahawks looking to draft quarterbacks this year in the first or second round. I only include Seattle because their starter, Geno Smith, is going to turn 35 during next season, and they don't really have any kind of succession plan, while all the other teams I mentioned there just don't have a single viable quarterback on their roster. Like most draft and scouting experts, I'm just not convinced that there are a lot of quarterbacks worth first-round picks coming out this year, so I think a number of teams will reach a little bit. That's exactly what happened this year. Remember Michael Penix at 8 to the Falcons? That was the big standout. But quarterback is just that one position that we know teams are willing to risk it all for. It's not a particularly brilliant business move. An average rookie quarterback, they perform pretty poorly. And if you get a well below average rookie quarterback, you're almost guaranteed to be picking, top 5 the next year, even if the rest of your team isn't that bad. Whether it's Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, insert your favorite quarterback prospect here, argue with me on this. There is not an Andrew Luck among them. There's not a Peyton Manning, a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes. If that type of player were entering the draft this year, I really think we would know. I think more organizations throughout the league need to stop trying to hunt that perfect young quarterback prospect. Don't do it through the draft. Don't do it by trying to have one fall in your lap in free agency. Don't try and do it off the trade block. Put pretty much everything you have into finding a quarterback that's a good fit and then developing him every single day until you have the guy that you want. We just had the running back renaissance this year, so if next year is the quarterback renaissance, I kind of hope it looks like that. Guys that have just developed for a long time, Sam Darnold being a fantastic example. Seeing as everybody's reported for spring training now, we'll move on to some baseball and start with glove talk. Defense is still a valuable part of baseball, no matter how much people are indifferent to it, especially when watching. We're going to be focusing on 2 names, one big and one absolutely colossal, and what teams might get out of them defensively this year. The guy I'm rooting for much more strongly in this scenario, Mike Trout. Not sure what I can say about Trout that hasn't been said before. Just please let this guy have another few fully healthy seasons. The Angels are thinking the exact same thing like they have for the last 5 or so, and when they showed up for spring training, Trout sat down for a meeting with the staff where it sounds like they mutually decided he was going to move from center to right field. The Angels really struggled to get production out of their right fielders last year, and I still don't have any reason to think that something's wrong with Trout's bat. He hasn't played an inning in right field in about 12 years, admittedly, and he is one of the great center fielders already. Here's the thing, though, what I'm just thinking about now. Let's say they have any other outfielders that they want to platoon with him. They can always just DH him. They don't have any other elite bats, especially veterans, that they need to DH more than him. Going forward for this year as somebody with no vested interest in the Angels, but as a lover of baseball and great players, I really hope this works. Let's talk about the injury history first with Trout. It's sad. I've never been huge on hypotheticals, but I can admit he would have been a lock for baseball's Mount Rushmore if he had never had a single notable injury to keep him off the field. It started in 2017, torn ligament in his thumb. He almost certainly would have won MVP if he hadn't gotten hurt that year. He had a ton of league-leading totals, and he still finished 4th in MVP after he only played 114 games. He strung together some more amazing years after that, uninterrupted. More recently, though, a calf strain in 2021. That actually limited him to only 36 games, and he still made the All-Star roster, by the way. Then a broken hamate in his hand from kind of a bizarre swing in 2023. And finally, last year, torn meniscus at the end of April. If you take every one of those off the board, I shudder to think where his career numbers would be right now. Now to the defensive side with Trout. Obviously, that's what this section's about. It's crazy to me that he's never won a Gold Glove. We all think of him as one of the most incredible all-around players the game's ever seen. When you talk about 5-tool players, obviously Trout has all of them, right? Can you hit for contact, power? Can you run the bases, throw, and have a great glove? The answer has always been yes to all of them. Plus grades. Being off the field, though, you just can't accumulate any numbers, so it's really held him back from possibly putting himself in the GOAT conversation. The thinking with him playing right field is just that he'll have to cover a little bit less ground and maybe not have to play quite so much hero ball. He has a laundry list of home run robberies, which are always awesome, by the way, and diving catches and crashing into the walls where he runs down a ball in the gap, but I can guarantee the Angels would trade all of that for league average defense and the ability to play even one more full season with no injuries. I am certain it'll be an easier position for him to play That doesn't mean he'll perform better there than he has historically in center, especially considering how the injuries have piled up, but at least it gives him a chance. Would you believe in the early part of last year while he was on the field, he had a 90th percentile sprint speed at age 33, by the way, per Baseball Savant? That is ludicrous. If anybody can completely flip back to their prime in their mid-30s without steroids, that's a big part of it, Mike Trout is a great choice, and I really hope that the move to right field just prolongs his whole career. Now to another potential position change, this time for all the wrong reasons. I told you last week that the top free agent third baseman, Alex Bregman, signed with the Red Sox. Thing is, Boston has a 3-time All-Star third baseman and a man who has gotten AL MVP votes in 5 of the last 6 years. Rafael is a fantastic bat by all accounts, right? He averages over 40 doubles, 33 homers, and 100 RBI per 162 games. That is all elite. But unlike Alex Bregman, he has stunk it up at third base, where he's played his entire career. Ever since he came into the league, no one has worse numbers at third base. Bregman, if you'll also recall, is the reigning AL Gold Glove winner at third base. And Devers, next to no range, league average arm strength, maybe, below average accuracy, and is positively terrible at picking it. Why? Oh, why does he insist that he won't move anywhere else to let Bregman take the hot corner? It's insane. I'd like to think that being a good teammate matters for things like making a team's Ring of Honor or the Hall of Fame. Maybe even that fans would factor that in a little bit when voting for, let's say, the All-Star Game. If none of that happens, if none of that's true and nobody actually cares if you're a good teammate or not, well, then I just think it should, and I'll throw that out there. Still, Devers, he's pretty slow and heavy. He's 6 foot 235. Again, he has a very dangerous bat, but please tell me what part of that description says that he shouldn't be playing first base or DHing. I think even he knows that he should, but he told the Boston media so clearly right after Bregman got there, quote, "I play third." The most mega-talented star in the world is just not worth as much if they can't get out from the weight of their own ego and do what's best for everybody. I would even go so far in this situation as to say they would win a lot more games with Bregman at third and Devers, anywhere else. A big part of the reason why I think Devers is putting up so much of a stink is Boston extended him through 2033 2 years ago at a total valuation of $313 million. You have to feel incredibly strong about a player to ever draw up a deal like this, but I bet the team now wishes that they had put a little team option in there at some point with him being just kind of a brat. Bregman, of course, has been a consummate pro about the whole thing, and he's trying to be a good teammate. He says, hey, I'll play wherever helps us win. We're really going to have to watch the Red Sox coming out of spring training and exactly how this all sorts out. But Devers, what are you doing? The NBA's All-Star festivities were also this past weekend. They went off, I can't say without hitches. That couldn't be further from true, probably. But at least it's done now. They played a 4-game single-elimination tournament with each game having a target score of 40 points for the actual, quote-unquote All-Star game. People will find anything to complain about whenever the league tries something new, and in some ways, I kind of think the players are even more guilty of this. You think that's a fair assessment? I'm not quite sure, but I will say that Kevin Durant complained hard about Kevin Hart interrupting the play a lot and giving his little commentary from the stands. Did you think you could let that little man, who has starred in the Celebrity All-Star Game before and is a professional comedian, come and just not have him tell jokes, not entertain people? The mutual understanding between everyone about All-Star games, maybe not in the MLB, I would argue, but for most others anyway, you simply don't play particularly hard in that game. In this case, you don't commit fouls, you don't block any shots, you don't try more than the minimum on defense. That's why the NFL went to a flag football game, right? They were close to it already with how much players wanted to just take care of each other, and the Pro Bowl flag game to cap off this year ended pretty decent. The lesson out of this segment, all pro sports are an exhibition and a business. All pro athletes are employees and entertainers. It's an extra duty or responsibility on top of everything else that they have to do physically, mentally, and emotionally to play. Through it all, cash is king, isn't it? The reason that you have to do what your boss says is quite literally because they sign your paychecks. Players do collectively bargain, and they make more demands each time that they have to negotiate a new one of those. The NBA specifically has a players' union, which is great. And I fully believe that the commissioner's office listens to their suggestions, those of the players that is, even if they don't plan to use too many of them. I'm going to link an article from The Athletic that I really enjoyed in the description of this one. It got reprinted in the New York Times, and it's about surveying fans that went to this year's NBA All-Star Game and what the data said. The ratings are not pretty. Of course, there's always sampling bias and wording of the questions and things like that to consider, but a stat that jumped off the page to me was 32.5% of people say All-Star games are a lost cause. I wonder if that would have been the case if the game had LeBron James, Giannis, who led the fan voting, Joel Embiid, Anthony Davis, Anthony Edwards. He even had to get scratched late with a groin issue. Any and all of them could be or have been previously MVP candidates. Maybe that has nothing to do with it, but I'd like to think that that's part of people's gripes, just that they didn't get to see all of the best players in the world. When I go to a game as a fan, which granted is not near as often as I go to a game to work, I never really mind when there's some stoppages and when they try some, new and different stuff. If you don't care for it, you get a moment to just go to the bathroom or go to concessions, take some good photos or videos, and you don't really miss any of the actual game action. Of course, the league had to give everyone at least a few minutes between games too, seeing as they played 4 of them back-to-back. I can't see, based on that 4-game format that they came up with and the necessity of entertainment, why the players would be overly upset with this. It's one more thing that great athletes do have to shoulder. Being part of these big spectacles that are played up for the camera, I don't think we're ever going to go backward in that regard, so I think they should just be ready for it from here on out. And that's going to cap off episode 49. 3 more episodes for season 1. Again, nothing will really change for anyone except for me. It will be easier to track my progress, though, with labeling them as seasons. Still prepping for some Michigan High School State Finals. I'm planning on calling the MHSAA Swim and Dive and Gymnastics Championships. Don't ever turn down an opportunity to work or to learn, Excited for both of those. Definitely a lot of work and prep that goes into it, and a couple of sports that are totally new to me, but I've been through that exact same process with a number of other gigs and come out fine. I'll hopefully make some content on those, and if I have any fun tape from them, I could try to throw some into an episode. You'll find out soon enough. Those are going to be the 2nd and 3rd weekends of March. This has been episode 49 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. Thanks for joining me.
He dropped it in a bucket. Touchdown!
Backer transition 3, bang!
He's bends it like Beckham. Are you kidding?